The words hit me physically before my brain could even process the intent behind them. "Emily, I think it's best if you leave." My father's voice sliced through the dining room air with the same icy precision he utilized during his closing arguments in court. The crystal chandelier overhead seemed to dim, or perhaps my vision was simply narrowing in response to the shock. I felt my fingers tighten around the stem of my wine glass until the delicate bowl threatened to shatter in my grip. The chatter around the mahogany table died instantly. Silverware froze in mid-air as guests paused. My sister Claire's perfectly curated smile faltered on her lips. My brother Julian suddenly found the pattern on his dinner plate fascinating. Every single eye in that room pivoted toward me. Some looked confused, but most held a look of knowing, as if they had been waiting for this very scene to play out. My father stood at the head of the table, his hand still raised with an unfinished toast, looking at me like I was a motion to dismiss that had just been granted. The formal invitation, the mandatory attendance, the seating card placed at the far end near Aunt Susan, who still thought Caleb was my driver, it had all been orchestrated for this exact moment. It was a public execution masquerading as a family celebration. My name is Emily, I am 34 years old, and I work as a publishing director. This is the story of how I finally stopped begging for a seat at a table that was never designed for me. I stood up because, honestly, what else could I do? My linen napkin slid from my lap to the floor, but I didn't bother to bend down and retrieve it. My hands had gone completely numb. My throat felt tight and constricted, but I wasn't crying. Not yet. I had learned decades ago how to swallow shame in front of the Sterling family. It was practically a survival skill. Then, the sound of a chair scraping against the hardwood floor broke the silence. Caleb, my husband, stood up beside me. There was something in his posture I had rarely seen, a coiled tension that made every person in that room suddenly sit up straighter. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking directly at my father with the kind of steady, unwavering gaze that made corporate investors uncomfortable during negotiations. "I'd like to make a toast," Caleb said quietly. My father's jaw tightened visibly. "This isn't your place." "That is debatable," Caleb countered, raising his glass. "But tonight, I seem to be the only one acting like actual family." The room collectively held its breath. I felt something shift deep inside me. It wasn't just relief that someone was finally defending me, but something sharper. It was anger, clear, focused, and long overdue. Because this moment didn't start tonight. It started 34 years ago when I was born the wrong kind of Sterling. I was the kind who loved stories more than stock portfolios. I chose words over litigation. I measured success in lives touched rather than titles earned. My father, Arthur Sterling, was a litigation partner who had built his career on destroying opposing counsel's arguments with surgical precision. At home, he applied the same ruthless standards. Love wasn't given freely. It was earned through achievement that met his exact specifications. My siblings learned to perform. I learned to disappear. Julian, the eldest, became everything Dad wanted. Varsity athlete, law school honors, and now climbing the ranks at Dad's old firm. Claire went into cardiothoracic surgery because, of course, she did. Their successes were celebrated with expensive champagne and speeches at gatherings exactly like this one. Mine were merely tolerated when they couldn't be ignored. I was 8 years old when I won my first writing contest. I handed Dad the certificate with trembling hands, desperate for just a flicker of pride. He glanced at it and said, "Writing doesn't pay the bills." That was it. No congratulations. No display on the fridge like other parents did. Just a reminder that I had chosen wrong, was wrong, and would always be wrong in his eyes. When I switched my major from business to English literature during my freshman year, he cut off my tuition funding entirely. He told me that if I was going to chase dreams, I had to do it on my own dime. I worked 2 jobs, took out massive loans, and still graduated with honors. It changed absolutely nothing. I spent my entire 20s trying to earn what should have been given freely. I shrank myself to fit into conversations dominated by court cases and complex medical procedures. I laughed at jokes that weren't even funny. I showed up to gatherings where I was treated like a ghost, even when I was standing right there in the room. Then I met Caleb in a bookstore on a rainy Tuesday. For the first time in my life, someone saw me without asking me to change a single thing. He was comparing book blurbs with the seriousness of someone choosing a life philosophy. When he caught me smiling at his intensity, he grinned back and offered to buy me a coffee. That afternoon turned into 3 hours of deep conversation. He actually listened, not to judge, but because he was genuinely interested in what I had to say. Caleb didn't come from money or prestige. His father was a union electrician, and his mother was a public school art teacher. They welcomed me like I had always belonged with them. When we got married a year later, my father said he was busy that weekend. He didn't attend. My siblings sent perfunctory texts, but Caleb's mom cried happy tears, and his dad called me family. I realized that is what real love looks like. It is uncomplicated, unconditional, and freely given. So, when the heavy ivory invitation arrived 3 weeks ago, printed on thick cardstock with Dad's monogram in gold foil, I knew I should have thrown it away. It read, "Sterling Family Celebration," specified immediate family only, and required formal attire. There was no explanation of what we were celebrating. There was no warm note, just a command performance. "You don't have to go," Caleb said gently when he found me staring at it. "I know," I replied. But some pathetic part of me still hoped that maybe Dad was softening. Maybe he would finally see me. I bought a dark green satin dress and had my hair professionally done. I rehearsed polite things to say in the car on the way over. When we arrived at Dad's house, the one that used to be my parents' home before Mom passed, no one greeted us at the door. Inside, soft jazz played in the background. Claire held court in red silk by the fireplace. Julian laughed with Dad's colleagues from the firm. They looked at me like I was a piece of furniture. I was spoken to, but not included. I was tolerated, but not welcomed. The place cards at dinner told the real story. Dad sat at the head of the table. Claire was to his right, and Julian was to his left. Caleb and I were placed at the far end, next to Aunt Susan, who spent dinner spooning mashed potatoes onto her napkin and asking if Caleb was my chauffeur. I watched Dad laugh with my siblings. He toasted to their achievements and spoke animatedly about their careers. I sat 30 feet away and felt like I was watching through a pane of glass. Every passing minute confirmed what I already knew but kept denying. I would never be enough for him because I had never wanted to be what he required. Then came the toast. He praised Julian's leadership and Claire's surgical precision. Then he talked about those who choose different paths while looking directly at me. He smiled that cold, litigation smile and said the words that would change everything. "I think it's best if you leave now." Caleb was raising his glass when my father's face had gone rigid. "To the woman you just tried to dismiss," Caleb said, his voice cutting clearly through the silence. "My wife, Emily." He turned slightly toward me, then back to Dad. "You say tonight is for people who matter? Let me tell you who actually matters. Emily built her life without a safety net. After you cut her off, she worked 2 jobs while finishing her degree. She launched her own imprint and gave dozens of authors their first shot. She has championed veterans, immigrants, and teenagers who had never seen themselves represented in a book before. She has been featured in literary festivals you have probably never even heard of because you never asked." Dad's knuckles went white on his wineglass. "But none of that matters to you," Caleb continued, "because you don't measure success in impact. You measure it in status and control. And when Emily refused to conform, you didn't just dismiss her. You erased her publicly, on purpose. He looked around the table at the rest of the guests. If this feels awkward, it should. You watched a father humiliate his daughter in front of everyone, and you said nothing. Some of you even smiled. The silence was absolute. My cousin couldn't meet my eyes. Claire's face had gone pale. Then Caleb looked at me, his expression softening. But here is what matters, Emily. I see you. I have always seen you. Not as the daughter who failed someone else's checklist, but as the woman who had the courage to define herself. Something broke open in my chest. It wasn't pain this time. It was recognition. Caleb turned back to Dad. You told her to leave? Fine. We will both leave. He set his glass down gently on the tablecloth. But don't ever mistake your silence for authority again. You may control this house and dominate this family, but you do not get to dictate her worth. He took my hand. It was steady, certain, and warm. And that is when I realized I wasn't leaving in shame. I was walking away from people who would never see me. There is a difference. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled my hand gently from Caleb's and turned to face my father. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. Do you know what is funny, Dad? I asked. I spent 34 years thinking something was wrong with me. I thought that if I just worked harder, achieved more, or became someone different, you would finally love me. I looked around the table. But tonight made me realize something. You can't love what you don't respect. And you have never respected anything that didn't look exactly like you. My father's face remained impassive, but I saw the muscles in his jaw working. Julian, I said, turning to my brother, how many times did you use my marketing analysis for your pitches? 3? 4? You never credited me. You just took the work and collected the praise. Julian's face flushed a deep red, and a few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Claire, I continued. My sister's eyes went wide. Remember when you told Mom's hospice nurse I was too emotional to make medical decisions? You had me removed from her care team in her final weeks. I barely got to say goodbye. Claire opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. I looked back at my father. You taught them that cruelty is fine as long as it is polite. You taught them that exclusion is acceptable if you dress it up in formal invitations and place cards. But I am done being your lesson in what happens to sterling children who don't perform correctly. I picked up my purse. And Dad, since you are so concerned about contributions and legacies, I have been documenting everything. Every dismissal, every exclusion, every time you told Mom not to encourage my foolishness. I'm writing a memoir. My father's face finally changed. Fear flickered across his eyes. It's not about revenge, I said quietly. It's about truth. It's about what happens to children raised by parents who treat love like a performance review. My publisher thinks it will resonate with a lot of people. I looked at Claire and Julian. You will both be in it. Every stolen credit, every cruel comment, every time you stood silent while he tore me down. I'm not changing your names. The room was so quiet I could hear the candles flickering. You wanted me to leave, I said to my father. Consider it permanent. But unlike you, I am not doing it quietly. I am doing it publicly. With receipts. I walked toward the door with Caleb beside me, his hand finding mine again. At the threshold, my father's voice cracked out. If you write that book, you are cut off permanently from everything. I didn't turn around. Your money was never what I needed. Your love was. And that expired a long time ago. The door closed behind us with a soft click. Outside, the night air felt impossibly clean. In the car, I started shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally speaking the truth after 34 years of swallowing it. You okay? Caleb asked softly. I think so, I said. Then I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. I'm writing that book. I'm actually doing it. He squeezed my hand. I know. I saw it in your eyes the moment you decided. The next morning I woke to 17 texts. Julian said, "That was unnecessary." Claire said, "You've always made everything about you." Various relatives sent concerned trolling messages about family unity and forgiveness. I blocked them all. But there was one message that actually mattered. It was from my editor at work. "Coffee Monday? Want to hear your pitch for that memoir you mentioned?" I had sent her a voice memo at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, the words pouring out after years of silence. Now it was real. I wasn't just walking away, I was speaking up. Not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel like they were the problem, when really they were just surrounded by the wrong people. The book took 8 months to write. I poured everything into it. The small cruelties, the gaslighting disguised as concern, the way exclusion became normal when everyone participated in the silence. I changed some details to protect privacy, but the emotional truth remained raw and unflinching. My publisher scheduled it for a fall release. The marketing team called it necessary and brave. I called it survival. 3 weeks before publication, my father's attorney sent a cease and desist letter. I sent it to my own lawyer, who laughed and said, "Truth is an absolute defense. They have nothing." The cease and desist was quietly dropped. 2 weeks later, the book launched on a Tuesday in October. By Friday, it had hit 3 bestseller lists. Not because it was salacious, but because it was honest. Thousands of people left reviews saying, "This is my family too." I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. My father never contacted me directly, but Claire sent an email 6 weeks after publication. "You've embarrassed us all. I hope you're happy." I wrote back, "I'm not happy, but I am free. There's a difference." She remained in her surgical position, but I heard through a colleague that her application for a department head role was quietly withdrawn. Julian sent nothing, but through mutual connections, I heard he had been asked to step back from a board position after someone forwarded him passages from my book at a meeting. Apparently, comparing his professional reputation to my actual documented work made him look less impressive. The things he had taken credit for suddenly had my fingerprints all over them. Through those same connections, I learned my father had resigned from 2 nonprofit boards quietly, without explanation. The Whisper Network had read my book. Karma isn't revenge. It's just the truth catching up. 1 year after that dinner party, I stood in the nursery of our new home outside Seattle. I was rocking my daughter as spring rain tapped against the window. Her name is Lily June. Lily for resilience, the flower that grows back every year, no matter what tries to kill it. June for new beginnings. She was 6 weeks old and already had Caleb's steady gaze and a grip that wouldn't let go once she had taken hold of something. I had found out I was pregnant 3 months after that dinner, during the most intense period of writing. Somehow, creating new life while documenting old wounds felt right. "Everyone's here," Caleb said from the doorway, holding my tea. Our living room was full of chosen family. Caleb's parents, my coworkers, and friends who had shown up without conditions. String lights glowed warmly against the walls. A cake on the table said, "Welcome, Lily." There were no speeches about achievements. Just people who loved without requiring a performance. Later, after everyone left, I found a letter by the door. There was no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. It was my father's. I held it for a long moment, then placed it unopened in a drawer. Not out of bitterness. I had already said everything I needed to say in print for the world to read. I didn't need his words anymore. They no longer shaped me. That night, I sat beside Lily's crib, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who begged for permission to exist. The one who shrank herself trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for her. I leaned close and whispered the words I wished someone had said to me as a child. You are already enough. You don't have to earn my love. It is yours completely, unconditionally, forever. As I said it to her, I realized I was finally saying it to myself too. To the little girl who loved stories when she was supposed to love law. To the young woman who walked out of that dining room and found her voice on the other side. To the author who turned her pain into purpose. And to every daughter who ever wondered if she was the problem. Let me tell you what I learned. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to win their approval. It is to stop needing it. The people who matter will see you without you having to prove yourself. And the ones who don't? They are just characters in your origin story. They are the obstacles that taught you how strong you really were. I don't talk to my father anymore. I don't need to. But thousands of strangers write to me now, saying my words gave them permission to leave toxic families, set boundaries, and stop performing for people who would never appreciate the show. That's not revenge, that's justice. And it turns out, the best revenge isn't making them sorry. It is making them irrelevant while you build something beautiful they can't touch. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I have an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That is access to over 500,000 titles at zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.